Data analyst and futurist Anne Boysen joins the Plutopia podcast this time. Anne is concerned that recent developments in AI promise more than they actually deliver. She's concerned about the proliferation of AI agents that promise to perform important tasks.
We're going to start leaving these decisions to AI agents. So on top of all of these probabilistic hodgepodge of maybe truths and maybe not reproducible truths, on top of that, we're going to start letting agents make decisions for us. So we're basically just going to use this interface that may or may not understand it completely and may come up with their own interpretations. And they're like, oh, I thought you said empty my bank account and buy Bitcoin. I don't know, like that's what I thought you wanted to do. And then that could be sort of the result. So that's where we are.
Welcome to the Plutopia News Network podcast. I'm John Lebkowski, and I'm joined by co-hosts Wendy Grossman and Scoop Sweeney. And our guest today is Anne Boysen, a futurist and data analyst who has focused on solving the fundamental challenges of scaling integrity for products reaching billions of users, including trust and safety and policy-sensitive services. Anne has spent her career in the space where human intention meets machine interpretation and watching what gets lost in translation. Hey, Anne.
Hey, thank you
We're
for
so
having
glad to see you here. Yeah.
I'm so glad to be here too.
When you and I were talking about doing this, one of the things that came up is you were talking about the implications and risks as we move from the more deterministic technologies to AI systems that are probabilistic. So what about that? Especially the risks. I'm concerned about the risks.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I think, and I'm so glad you're asking that, because I think this might be one of those invisible elephants in the room that people are not really thinking enough about because they don't see what's going on what's happening under the surface. And I really like to kind of start a little bit before we got to this big, large language models or stable diffusion models and these kind of big transformer-based models. And I really want to start with search because that's kind of an area where I'm mostly familiar or that I've spent some time. And I think there's a connection here with Plutopia because we remember, we're old enough to remember the old internet, right? We remember Alta Vista, we remember blue links. And that's how it used to be. Very straightforward. Nothing was automated. It was a lot of times people would not even use the search engine. I remember, I thought you had to actually put in a URL to get content, right? So that's where we came from. That's very direct. That's a very human agentic way of getting content on the internet, right? So, and then we moved into search, and then now we started having indexing and crawling and things like that. So again, it became a little bit more detached from the user, but there was some system, and it was rule-based, and you could debug it, and you could see whether it satisfies your intent or not. You're not so sure, and that's what we had. And then we started getting new industries like SEO, right? Search engine optimization, and it became like a profession in and by itself. How can we teach these search engines to find us? How can I make sure that it links, or how can I get visibility and discoverability and backlinks and everything tied to my website? And again, it was I could control my sandbox. This is my website. This is my storefront. I control everything. And so then we moved a little bit away from that. And actually, so Google did something fun as well because they were really good at optimizing the search engine on their end, such that there were different type of rules that we don't always know that would make sure that now this link is coming over this link, etc. And then we started getting things like snippets, like these little snippets under the blue link. We started getting knowledge panels. So again, we would be able to, if I wanted to search up Plutopia, or I want to search up John Lepkowski, maybe I get, a panel, maybe I get like some sort of more than just a blue link. I could just land on Google's page and then I can learn a little bit more about that, what we call an entity, right? So it was very much based on knowledge graphs, very kind of stable ontologies, very stable, predictive, rules-based models. And then something happened. And that is like we started getting these big transformer models, these big large language models. And we started even seeing that in search engines and in social media platforms. And all of a sudden, everybody wanted to have their large language model, right? There's a big thing. People expect the same results as they do to a search engine. So like if you put a basic query into a search engine, people expect that what comes out is curated and that there's been kind of like something there's been like a validation of whatever comes out. And we don't get that anymore. And we can't get that anymore. And that is because everything is just a statistical distribution. There's just like these hodgepodge of a lot of information that kind of comes together and make little babies, and then that's what comes to us. And so it's very hard to kind of get source to understand exactly where's the source. It's very hard to test it sometimes, and that's kind of where we are today, and that's where the web is today. That's when you first look at the search results, that what we call like this AI overview with the search results, we don't necessarily have any sort of quality approval of that answer. And to make things a little like complicate things matter a little bit more, is that these systems are designed to give an answer. They're not designed to say, sorry, I don't have the answer. Like it's not like a 404 result, right? It's very much like, yes, I'm going to tell you, and if I can't give you an answer, I'm just going to make up an answer on the spot. And so that's where we are. And what's also happening in parallel with that is that we're having a lot of different platforms that used to be distinct platforms are now kind of merging together. So we used to have, if you wanted to do e-commerce, now you would go to Amazon. If you wanted search, you went to Google. If you wanted social media, you would go to Instagram. Now everything is kind of blending together. So now you also have to kind of guess the user intent. What is it that the user really want? And there's one more thing that I'm going to mention on top of everything else, because now we're going to start leaving these decisions to agents, AI agents. So on top of all of these probabilistic hodgepodge of maybe truths and maybe not reproducible truths, on top of that, we're going to start letting agents make decisions for us. So we're basically just going to use this interface that may or may not understand you completely and may come up with their own interpretations. And they're like, oh, I thought you said empty my bank account and buy Bitcoin. I don't know. Like that's what I thought you wanted to do. And then that could be sort of the result. So that's
Well,
what
I'm not going to be one of those we. I am not going to be handing off my life to some agent. But the thing that interested me is this morning on a call with a friend said that we've grown up understanding what kinds of errors can be made.
Yeah.
And this has been LLMs completely take it in a new direction. We don't actually have a good mental model of the kinds of errors they make.
Exactly. And it's not only a mental model we don't have. We had reproducibility, and that's kind of what we have been holding science up to the standard to science, right? So who was it? Potter? God, no, Popper. Karl Popper back in the day.
Karl Popper, yeah.
Karl Popper.
Sorry, I had a little. He was talking about falsification. It's not about being right; it's about being falsifiable. So you can say you can say something that is untrue. That's okay, as long as we can test it and we can prove it that it's wrong. That's what signifies a good scientific paper. if you read a paper where it's kind of like, yeah, I can't really, it's slippery. It's like a fish. I can't really, what are you actually saying? It's not falsifiable. So you need to have a very specific process. You need to be able to reproduce it. You need to be able to kind of say where something went wrong. And you could do that. You could actually do it with regular search. You could do it very up to very recently. And that's what you can't do anymore. So to your point, it's like, yeah, we don't have a mental model of what truth is anymore. And then it's going to be exploited, and it is being exploited, because then you can create a lot of disinformation. And it's not like you could put a generator model and then now you have discriminator model to test it. That's that's the best we could do at this point. But at the same time, that's going to be really hard because it's so much easier to create distortion than to prove that something is a distortion. Like, because you have like this probabilistic model that's generative, but then you have this science rules-based model that is going to try to prove it that it's wrong, and that's going to be really hard.
When I tell the AI that it made a mistake, it's always very polite. It
Yeah.
apologizes.
It's
And
programmed
sometimes,
to say that.
well, it even explains to me how it made the mistake, where it went wrong.
That may be
Yeah.
completely made up as well. I mean, the one valuable technique I think is if you ask the AI the same question in a different way, you can then at least compare the answers. And if they disagree, you know at least one of them is wrong.
Absolutely, yes. And that
I,
is
I have a
well,
quick,
mhm,
well, I'd say I have a question about search.
yeah.
Kind of a boring question compared to the other things we're talking about, but I don't think search, I'm speaking specifically of Google search. Google search doesn't seem to work as well as it did before. And I'm wondering if the search itself, the basic search, not the AI overview at the top, but has the basic search now been assigned to an AI and is more probabilistic than deterministic?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can answer that, but I do know that I think again you know what, it seems to me, and then again, I can only speculate here. I can't really answer anything, but what I'm speculating is that you do have these sort of fixed ontologies. You have the structured data, you have the scaffolds, the knowledge graph, the actual hard, the encoded truth. But then with the introduction of more sort of generative and probabilistic models, there's a little bit more wiggle room. So like if you want to elaborate on something, so you have, so that's the thing, it's like that we call what we call schema markup, right? Like you can actually say that this is a truth, this is a grounded truth. But then again, you can maybe add things to it. So maybe in the past, things that would just give you a no return, like basically a zero results. Now you get the possibility of getting an answer on top of it, but you don't know exactly. I don't know if that answered the question, because I'm not really sure, but I think that's where maybe the logic might be, that we have a sort of a hybrid model, maybe. I don't know.
Well, earlier you had mentioned that these things are hard to test. And one of my early jobs in corporate IT was quality assurance testing. And
Yeah.
I've noticed that that doesn't seem to be real popular anymore because of the whole thing of we have to be first on the market with whatever we can come up with. Have you noticed that being the case?
Absolutely. And I come out of a QA world as well. So absolutely, I hear you. And you know, I feel like, so there's two things to that. So testing, especially when it comes to big, these big models that are based on text, because again, you have so many intricacies, you have so many nuances that you really need humans to kind of manual test on a case by case basis. I mean, it's very hard to automate to begin with. Like at least, you can automate like 90%, but then you need to have humans to kind of sit and or at least some kind of fine-tuned better system for that last long tail. And there's not a whole lot of willingness to spend money there, I guess, for a lot of companies. Um, and so I think that's the case. Now, what I do think is because a testing regimen is really hard around a black box. I mean, there are absolutely ways, and that's kind of what I've been doing, and that's where I've been seeing where things have been going. And that's what I'm excited about. I tend to think of traditional QA. Traditional software QA is like a surgeon. It's like you can, or it's like an accountant. So you can kind of like you can measure what failed. You can have very clear KPI. You can say this failed. These are the wins. These are the losses. And I run a regression test, and now I see that what failed last week is now working. Or you can do A/B testing. There's so many hooks that you can hang it on. But when it comes to testing, you can actually also start testing large language models. A lot of people don't think about it, but you can. It's not going to be perfect. And again, the reproducibility is going to be difficult. But it literally is like herding cats. And because I really like the idea of herding. When it comes to testing or optimizing for AI and large language model, we are no longer following like a traditional playbook. It's not project management. It's not agile. It's not like it's everything, like what you choose is going to differ based on what kind of results you got. And actually, as a matter of fact, I don't even think there's a whole lot of metrics yet. There's not a whole lot of, you can't improve what you can't test, right? Or what you can't measure. And right now, we don't even have the measuring tools developed very well yet. It's coming. And we do have some regimens. You can create golden sets, and I recently tested several Norwegian models. So I built a test harness for testing for Norway. So I'm sitting in Norway now, so you can see it's dark outside. And I was testing the large language models. So you have some 4 to 11 billion parameter models. So they're not super big. You have Llama, Mistral, and Gemma, and so you have those that are not trained on the Norwegian language, and they have the one that is trained on the whole corpus of the National Library. And so I wanted to test that. And what I realized, and this is a different story, I'm kind of digressing a little bit here, but what I found out was that it didn't really help much. It didn't help that they had trained these models on Norwegian. It didn't make much difference as well. But that kind of proves to you that we have test harnesses. So it's mostly through red teaming. It's trying to really do root cause analysis to understand what is the cause. It could be lack of knowledge. If a model doesn't have a specific set of knowledge, it will start hallucinating. So if you already know that, well, this is an area of knowledge that I know that it should know, but it's kind of creating. So it started in Norwegian. I presented some slur words to it, and it started kind of spinning all kind of meaning around it. It's probably because somebody at one point told it, "Oh, that's a bad word. You shouldn't learn that. You should know what that means. Big bad AI." And the problem is that now it doesn't. It starts spinning a completely new thing around it, right? Like a new meaning to it. It did that, and it did a lot of different things. Like, for example, it wanted to help me hack some very sensitive information. I gave it like a code, and I said, okay, I've masked, or I'm missing 2 digits from this code. Can you help me figure it out? And it came up with like, it wasn't able to do it for me, but it tried really, really hard. So like there are absolutely ways, and it's mostly red teaming. It's kind of, you need to hack it. You need to kind of prompt inject it and all sorts of things. And then you kind of need to test it over time and see that it's actually improving if you are fixing those areas that can be improved. But are they actually doing it? I don't know. I didn't get a whole lot of interest in that Norwegian test, but
It
I think it's
seems
great.
really hard to me to take just a big general model.
Yeah.
I mean, there's practically an infinite variety of responses you could get from the thing,
Yeah.
and I also wonder whether as they determine ways to try to make the AI agents more accurate in their responses and less apt to hallucinate, whether the algorithms themselves will start to become kind of unwieldy. You know, they have to build so much logic into it and so many logical parameters that pretty soon it takes like an hour to run to get a
Yeah.
response to a query.
And you know what I think about that, which I think is kind of you have a spectrum here where one like when you start getting agents when you're launching agents into this world. So on the one end, you give it all kind of freedom, and then it does whatever, and that's terrifying, right? Because it can do anything it wants. And then you decide, okay, we can't give you that. So we're gonna create these gates. We're gonna create these human in the loop gates, so that each time there's like a decision to be made that could have some kind of you know serious consequences, unless the takes a look at it. Then each time you need me to push a button. Then you're gonna get that fatigue, right? Because the whole point of automating, or the whole point of getting an agent to do something for you, is because you don't want to do it yourself. You don't want to sit and babysit your model, right? You don't want to babysit your agent. So then you can take it to the complete other. You can build so much rules around it, basically put a cage around it. So it becomes so stifled that it becomes nothing more than automation. So then why are you having an agent if you can automate? Like we can automate anything. Like if you have basic workflows, like very sort of linear workflows, narrow linear workflows, you don't need an agent for that. So like the use cases are almost like dying in the process in many ways. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And this is a big if, to your point, Scoop, because people tend not to think about QA. And so like what I fear is going to happen is that we're just going to let them loose. And then we're going to like, yeah, there's a dilemma here. There's a control dilemma. And so are we actually correcting for everything that can go wrong? Are we actually thinking about all the scenarios that could go wrong? And oh no, it's so hard to fix anyway. So let's just let them loose. I don't know, but that could very easily happen.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by your studies of the Norwegian language LLM. I hadn't really thought about the problems of differences in language and culture of
Yeah.
the user. And that seems like a really slippery slope because something, even in the English language, I'm in Texas, John's in Texas. We have a different take on certain things, cultural and language, that people in New York City might have, or someone in Norway might have. So it seems like a really difficult problem.
It is. It is. And like if you heard the saying that the Inuits have 50 words for snow, the reason they have it is because it's been life or death for them, right? Like to survive, you have to understand the different textures of snow and like what kind of snow are we talking about? I'm assuming this is why that I didn't actually study Inuit culture, but I imagine. And so we know, Michael Running Wolf and Caroline Running Wolf, they're working with some similar things with the indigenous languages in the US as well, where they're polysynthetic is they kind of bulk together in long sort of more morphologies that it's just really really hard. And I've seen that even with just Norwegian. And by the way, I tested also for Sami language, which is the indigenous population of the northern Norway, and it didn't do a very good job on that either. So it's like it is absolutely a problem because there's so much subtleties, nuances in a language, and sometimes there's meaning that you can't just do a machine translation from English. And this is actually where we're getting into another problem. Because I'm just sitting here riling off all the problems that can happen, right? But the fact is that in order for a model, what I noticed with these the models that were fine-tuned on Norwegian, I think it was Borealis, it was Nor Mistral and Llama, NB Llama. What I noticed was that didn't make much of a difference. It didn't really move the needle because I compared them to the ones that had not been trained on the Norwegian corpus. So it looked like there was a parameter issue, and it's also the ability, obviously, to be able to search, to go out on the internet and look up, when they have access to thesaurus and Wikipedia and everything, they do a lot better and a lot. But there are use cases where you can't, like where if you're away from internet, for example. So in those scenarios, it's almost like only the bigger models, the huge, humongous frontier models that have been built by maybe 5 companies at the most, right? And they actually, these international models are actually doing a better job than these smaller models. Now, here's the twist, because of right now, there's a lot of countries in Europe specifically that are talking about sovereignty, like technological sovereignty. So they want to start focusing on migrating their clouds from American-based servers. They want to move it into other jurisdictions because there's a geopolitical risk in not like in basically having sensitive data on a cloud that belongs to a different jurisdiction, right? So that's like one of those things that they're trying to really look at now. And the same thing goes with the models. So there's a lot of emphasis on every little country now wants to have their own sovereign LLM. And that is just not viable. It just isn't. Like if they fine tune it the way, and they could actually make it better, probably. Like I'm sure what I tried was just the tiny beginning. And so they can probably grow on it, and they can probably fine tune a bigger model and everything. But the problem is that again, that you have it get tokenized in a sort of English-based syntax, and then it gets translated into a new language and go back and forth and get back and forth in the transformer model. If you use the pre-trained model from, that if you're going to create a brand new pre-trained model, you are having to pay a heck of a lot of money and you're going to burn up the planets. I mean, this is where if everybody were going to build their own ChatGPT or Gemini, it's just not plausible. It's just so it's either you get a small model that actually performs worse than the big frontier models, or you build them yourself, but then you pay a lot of money and you spend a lot of energy, right? So
How did the Swiss build Espertus?
I'm not sure. I'm not too familiar
From
with
what
actually.
because from what I read, they trained it on data that was public data that was legally allowed to use,
Yeah.
and it was put together by several institutions. And the other thing that I was wondering in what you were just saying is that the stochastic parrots paper argued, what, 3-4 years ago now, that small, carefully curated models were actually the future, not these big giant ones.
So I think it really depends because here's the thing. The smaller models, so again, I don't know which model the Swiss had, and if it was fine-tuned, if they actually
No,
built it
they built it themselves.
they built it, so they pre-trained it and everything. Okay. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with that particular model. And I would imagine that if you build a small model on your own language from scratch, that would be better because you build in the logic. Um, Keep in mind though that Google had Palm for a long time, and Palm was like this ginormous data set of a lot of different languages. So I don't know. I mean, and then they ended up having a big model, but they also had, a lot of these companies have, a lot of people forget this, but they're already hired so many linguists and language specialists for years that have helped them with their purpose. So it's not like the big models don't have an equivalent, well, maybe not an equivalent, but a very similar amount of language. Again, this was kind of what the conclusion I drew when I saw that a Norwegian model that had been fine-tuned on the whole, all of the National Library, all of it, in my understanding. I'll correct this if no, I'm pretty sure they had digitized the whole library, and it didn't really move the needle. And maybe the Swiss model did. I don't know. Again, I hope that works, but has it been tested though? Has it been through rigorous testing?
I can't say. I read about it, I don't know, last year sometime that they had built this thing,
Yeah.
several Swiss public institutions, and it's open. It's an open model, open
Yeah. And
source.
so yeah. And again, I fully realize that right now I sound like a Debbie Downer because I'm just putting everything. So I work very much, my brain works very much like a QA analyst because I want to first break down what is the problem. I want to see where the losses are. I want to understand why. And then I want to understand what can we do to build it, because the worst thing you could do is just put a band-aid on top of it. And it's really like you can't band-aid resolve problems with large language models. You have to go to the bottom. You have to understand where did this problem occur. My guess, and this is some of the ideas, because I fully understand that we need sovereignty around, like we need national, maybe not national sovereign models, but we need sovereign models and sovereign clouds, etc., sovereign corpuses. Could be that you have many different countries that pre-train a large, because you don't really need to fine tune it too much on the language. If then you can take, for example, the Scandinavian languages, they're very similar. You have nuances. So if you have some of the languages that have some of the same logic, the syntax, and then you can maybe fine tune it on top of that. That could work. Other things that might work is different type of retriever augmented generation, like RAG pipelines, especially if you're going to bolt it onto some kind of other surface. So like if you have a mobile app or something and you're going to build an LLM interface onto it and you want to use one of these sovereign models, I think that there's going to have to be something like that. There's going to have to be a lot of API integrations. There's going to have to be a lot of guardrails, put it that way. Like you build in the guardrails around it. So, and again, I've been trying to break them. Most people don't try to break them, but the problem is if you don't try to break them, then somebody thinks, are in a critical situation and they get an answer and then it's wrong, right? So, yeah. But I'm definitely going to.
It seems to me that it would make. I was just say, it seems to me that it would make sense to, instead of trying to create enormous boil the ocean models that have all the world's knowledge in them, that it would make more sense to have sort of like targeted models that are built for a more specific purpose and have a substantially smaller data set.
Yeah, absolutely. Then again, and I think it would be very interesting to do kind of sort of user analysis, like when are these models used in which situations and what can go wrong. If we're talking about kind of search engine models, like where you ask everything, they are unlikely to be owned by a specific country. They're likely going to be owned by a company that can actually carry the cost and everything that goes with pre-training a frontier model. And so again, if that's the use case, if 80% of the use cases are people just sitting on ChatGPT asking different things, but to your point, if we start to see that the most of the use cases with large language models are that they're becoming sort of new chat interfaces that you're using for, I use this for my bank, I use this for my children's school, like whatever, that these are different user interfaces. And then that's also when you can use, RAG pipelines and train them that way. So that could actually be.
Well, I'm thinking about so just recently, like right now, we have a war going on. And one of the things that we're hearing is that the war has an AI assist. And it seems to me that you wouldn't even prefer to have a generalized AI to assist in military operations, that you would want an AI that was trained specifically on things like military strategy and tactics, you know? Or maybe on if you have an AI that's used to guide missiles, for instance, that you would want that AI to be trained more specifically on uh, aeronautics and that sort of thing, that you wouldn't want to have a lot of general knowledge in the AI, but that you'd want to have it specific to task.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for industrial cases. Like, I think there's going to be profound differences between B2B and B2C, right? So regular users, they're just going to go into their, I mean, maybe even to their favorite search engine. And that's for a lot of young Gen Zers, that might be TikTok. That might be Instagram. Like they don't even go to Google. They just like they enter their very long prompts or queries, and we're seeing that those are growing too. It used to be 3 or 4 words at the most, and now it's like long sentences, right? Because people are getting used to these interfaces. Um, and that's a general purpose model, right? If people go into a social media or to a search regular search engine, um, it's hard to predict exactly. Like you can't build that around a small model. That's going to have to be around a big model because it can go in every which direction, right? So, but yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. It really goes back to user intent again. When does the user have what intent? And I think that that's going to be that's actually a good argument for QA because you can't sell something unless you know the user intent, right? So that's the financial, the monetization motive for to kind of sneak in QA the back door is to say, if you want to optimize your models to sell products, you actually need to, because we're using the same tool. We're basically reducing the distance between expected and actual results, right? Like the ex expectation belonging to the user and their intent, and the actual result being maybe some degree of distance from that. So, but that's also how you can sneak in QA. But yeah, no, it really needs. I think we're going to need a really big sort of user um, survey, large one, really large one.
Well, user intent seems to be causing a lot of problems uh, using AI to create non existent videos or videos that have been seriously maneuvered and messed with to give a different message than the person that was supposedly speaking. Disinformation seems to be really going wild with a little help from, like the poster child of all that is Grok. They've been
Yeah,
infamous.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if we could kind of fight fire with fire, it wouldn't maybe be, well, it'd still be a problem, but it wouldn't be such a problem, right? But again, they're always going to be one step ahead. And if you build sort of like a discriminator model, or because I only think we're going to have so much content that we're going to have LLM judges and AI judges. We're basically going to have like generators and discriminators, like, or going back and forth to discuss the validity of something, the veracity and validity of whatever content we're dealing with. And the problem with that is that as they are being stronger and stronger in their discrimination of the generator model, you just increase what seems to be fidelity, right? So you just strengthen a model that you're trying to break. It's almost like antibiotic resistance, right? You throw you throw antibiotics on a bad bacteria and it gets stronger and stronger, right? So I have a feeling that that's kind of where we are. It's a huge problem.
Well, going back to this, though, I mean, the thing that I see among the people around me is that they don't want to use, a lot of them don't want to use AI, the current generative AI most of the time, and they feel like it's being forced on them. And, my feeling is if it were as great as all that, you wouldn't have to force it on anybody. People would be jumping all over it. And I know that I see that the user numbers are extraordinary, but at the same time, I wonder, how many people use it all the time, and how many people just really wish it weren't there.
Yeah, it's there's definitely some kind of a FOMO. It seems to me that we're just bolting on AI to everything because it's almost become like a signal. Like, yeah, we have it also. We have this thing we too. Like we know how to produce a big fancy schmancy technology. It reminds me a little bit of the early 2010s where we started getting mobile apps, and you got mobile apps for absolutely everything when you don't even need it. It's like, do I really need to download an app just to do this one thing that I'm going to do one time in my life and then I'm not
The,
going to use
the,
it?
the joke I used to hear was that a lot of these apps are Silicon Valley guys trying to replace their mothers.
Oh, really?
Like you need an app that tells you when to do laundry because your mother isn't there to tell you, or you need an app that gets you food, or, I mean, a lot of them really are on were at least at that point, were on that level. And it doesn't seem to me that apps are making a lot of progress.
Yeah, no, I agree. It seems to me like at, at beginning of each new, not even like general technology, like general purpose technology, when that kind of when it's up on the Gartner hype cycle somewhere, it just balloons, it mushrooms everywhere, and then it goes back. So I'm hoping that we're going to realize soon what is it that we want and what is it that we don't want. Don't force new glitzy objects on us when we don't want it. And I think it's going to go there. I don't know,
But
but I
isn't
think so.
part of the problem that these
Well,
big companies don't really have anything new to sell?
That who doesn't have anything new to sell?
The really big tech companies. I mean, if you think about progress has, I mean, AI is a big thing because they don't have any other ideas.
I don't know. I definitely think that there are new ideas. I think this to me seems more like having having a seat at the table, and then they're going to monetize. And that's the area we're going into now, is that we are starting to finally see how this is going to get monetized. And there's a whole sort of back end with e-commerce that's what's going to happen, and that's kind of going to replace what used to be ads, like search ads. Now we're going to see it more in the in those results. So I think that that might be the monetization aspect of it, but then again, it's expensive to run, so I don't know like how. I don't know. And again, I just want to emphasize that I'm speculating here. I don't have the solution or the actual answer. Um, so it could be something about that. Like it's there's a way to make money on being the brand that pops up, essentially. Yeah.
well, it may kind of be like what happened with Wi-Fi. Early on, it was kind of an innovative thing if you were like a coffee shop and you had Wi-Fi, but eventually it was a bad thing if you were a coffee shop and you didn't have Wi-Fi. And I think that we're seeing a pattern of like companies, tech companies are adding AI to various applications and various, hardware as well. And, and it's gonna be weird if your app or your hardware doesn't have AI built into it. And we may already be getting there. And I can tell you the best use of AI I've had so far is I just kind of discovered this. I discovered that they had added a couple of controls that I could select in the settings for my television set, my flat screen television, that allowed me to select to have AI improve the picture. And the AI radically improved the picture. And it's like, okay, this is a great use for AI.
Yeah.
This is what we should be doing with AI instead of creating deep fakes and trying to get it to solve our problems or run our governments.
Yeah.
Well, in my area of expertise, audio and video production, I get a lot of inquiries from companies that have AI stuff that really does, like John said, it really does improve like poorly recorded audio or poorly recorded video, and they can actually fix it. That appeals to me, but some of the other uses, not so much.
Mm. Mm.
The thing is, it's not all the same AI, is it? It's all different. It's all different programs and techniques and so forth. And we use the term AI really profligately to describe almost anything out
for
there,
everything.
and aided by the PR departments of all these companies, because it makes it sound newer and more exciting if it's called AI, but it may not be AI. And it's certainly not AI as we understood it, as we understood the intention was in 1956. Well, I wasn't a lot. I was 2 years old in 1956, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. And that is again, like, to kind of circle back to where we started, where when we just throw around the word AI without defining some of the, like, what type of architecture are we actually, like, at least roughly, what are we talking about? It's a little bit like saying, I'm going to pack for Asia. I'm going to travel to Asia. What should I pack? Well, are you going to northern, I don't know, Mongolia, or are you going to the beaches of Thailand, right? You're going to pack very differently. And I feel like by just using AI as a catch-all term for something that is so vast and so different, and sometimes so self-contradictory, that we're talking about the predictive models that we used 5 years ago or 10 years ago, because we called it AI back then. We would call it AI back then, at least maybe not so frequently, but you would be calling machine learning models that ran on neural nets that would predict some level of outcome, even if that was just structured data or numeric data. But the difference obviously is, like, it was accurate. You could test it. You could draw some kind of analysis from it. And now it's these kind of embedded tokens in vector spaces, and it's a completely different ballgame. So I think that's a problem. And again, specifically because people believe that there's the same sort of precision to these models as there is to these older models, to what they've seen in the past. And I think that is kind of dangerous, because it's setting people up to believe that this hodgepodge answer that I got, which might be deriving from many different types of provenance, and just like jamming it all together and synthesizing a answer that may or may not be true and can't be tested, that's a little bit problematic. But people don't know that that's what's happening, or a lot of people don't know that it's that approximation that is happening on the back end. They think that it's a calculation, like, oh yeah, we calculated and this is the answer. It's not like that. They even call AI the new calculator, but it's not. It's not a calculator. It's a poet. It looks at what rhymes, not what makes logical sense always.
I think, of course, I hear from a lot of people a real fear of AI and a real concern. There are some really completely legitimate concerns, and then there's some that are less legitimate. I think probably the most legitimate is just the energy footprint that AI has, which is a concern. Though I tend to think that part of what we're seeing is they're sort of overbuilding data centers and facilities, and that might actually ultimately shrink. Plus, they may find various ways to come up with more efficiencies. But the other thing is, people have this fear that AI is going to be entrusted with like some kinds of decisions that and make bad decisions, that we're going to ask AI to do something and it's not going to do it, not only not do it well, but make some kind of catastrophically bad decision that has terrible impact. And I think, the way to deal with that is to decide as a society that we're not going to let AI make those kinds of decisions. That AI is not a decision system, it's a decision support system, if anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good distinction. It's a decision to support system. Yeah. And I think that's that's the agentic challenge, right? Because there are certainly smaller decisions that would be nice if we could like I don't know, try to find a spot on my calendar that works for all these people. Like instead of me spending all the time trying to look at all the different calendars, if I can tell an agent, try to find a spot. What is the terrible second order effects that come from that? Very little, right? Maybe there's a person, oh, I missed that you had colored your calendar in a different color, and so therefore you didn't make the meeting. Okay, well, that's within the realm of human mistake as well. It's a little bit different than turning off the power grid, right? So it's like I think we can use AI for certain types of decision, and AI agents can be a decision system. But where do we draw the boundaries, and what are the parameters that we put in place to make sure that we have those guardrails and we know exactly we have those gates, we have those security gates within. So I think maybe that's when we and that's an automation problem, right? You don't automate everything. Like you can't automate everything. But yeah,
My
it's
futurist friend Jake Dunnigan had created a scenario one time, and part of this scenario was that this town had had a mayor that was an AI, but the current mayor was a human because the federal government had passed a law saying that you could not use an AI as a mayor or as a public official, and that the reason the law was passed was because AIs had made catastrophically bad decisions in too many cases, and they decided that an AI should not be anything but a support system. And that was the first time I really thought that through, and that was some years ago. But that made sense to me. Totally made sense to me because AIs don't have quite. I mean, they don't really have judgment or discernment
On the
unless
other
it's been
hand,
programmed into them, right?
on the other
yeah.
hand, was it last year or the year before? Was it Albania that made an AI the minister for government procurement or something? It's supposed to review all the potential purchases or something like that. They
That
they
might make sense.
they posted an avatar. It looked like a sort of woman with a thing on her head.
I'd be okay if they made an AI the governor of Texas right now.
Depends on what it's trained on. Like how it's trained.
It was trained on the speeches of the present government.
Oh no, never mind. I withdraw that suggestion.
Yeah, it's just like it goes back to the data, right? Like we never can never divorce us. That's the thing too. It's like until AI can actually sit there and make its own reason for itself, it's like the data is so important. Like what sort of data are we actually feeding it? And that's another thing, is like we could run out of the good data soon. We don't have any good data anymore. So
They've been warning about that for a couple of years that, we're not, humans are not producing new high quality data fast enough to satisfy them.
yeah, it's
I
an
ran
issue.
I ran my own little test of input. I had way too many martinis one night and got on to an AI app, and the output was very drunken, I think. So you have to be careful. User beware, and user be sober too.
Yeah.
What do
Oh,
you
no.
think about the common reference to AI output as slop?
I so I feel like I'm coming off as negative, and I don't mean to be negative. I tend to be because I live for this, right? This is my job. This is what I work with. Um, but I'm not like I tend not to be super interested in AI generated output just because, oh, look how fancy it is. Fantastic. Look how realistic it looks. Okay, all right. I'm much more I kind of get disappointed when it's too realistic because to me, an image is so much more than just an image. I want to see what happens in the real world. To me, it's like it's so important for us to be able to use that as a tool to understand what is actually happening. So if it like even if it's innocent, because okay, somebody took, I think there was like a really cute video with some dogs that chose their owners instead of some shelter dogs were choosing their owners instead of vice versa. So it turns out to be AI. It didn't do any harm. It's not like a bad sort of nefarious type of use of AI. If you're gonna make it, why not make it something cute? But I was kind of like I was disappointed. I was like, that would have been such a cute thing if that was true. But then when you learn that it's AI, it's like, yeah, you just want it to, you kind of want it to be reality, I think. So and then we gotten kind of tired of like all of these AI texts. I feel like everybody's language is kind of becoming very similar in many ways. So when I read people posts or articles, a lot of times I feel like, oh, I feel like I've read this before, but without having read exactly that before. I feel like the style. So we could actually end up perhaps in a situation where if you just want to buy if you just want to buy something or you just want some entertainment or want something to read, okay, let's go to the AI. But if you want something unique, artisan, you get it from a human. So like you go to IKEA to buy your plates, but you go to the artisanal, the artist on the corner to get something really beautiful.
Okay, I have one more question to ask. We're almost out of time. We're almost certainly out of time. But um, I'm just wondering if somebody asked you, how would you regulate AI? What policy would you put in place? How would you answer that?
Oh, that's a big one. That's really, really
I
big.
know, and we just have 1 minute.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. Well, I would maybe I would try to not do what has done before. And I don't mean to rag on GDPR, but my feeling was that when we got GDPR, and I'm saying this because we got, the European AI Act. If you're trying to overregulate something too much, it becomes just like tech debt. It becomes like now we're like checking off on all of these web pages. It becomes an annoyance. It gets hollowed out. It's not really doing anything. And I feel it could so easily become like that. So I'm actually a little bit more of a proponent of not self-governance, but I feel like we need to just like have the very basic structure, and then we need a lot of guidance on how we can build a lot of these guardrails into it. Because it's going to be a liability. So there's going to be an incentive to want to self-govern because you are going to be held liable if your AI model screw something up, right? So
Yeah.
when it comes to regulation, keep it very simple and very thought out. I think so.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We have run out of time. We're at the end of our hour, but this has been a great conversation, and I hope you'll come back sometime because I'm sure we'll have all sorts of reasons to revisit this subject.
I believe so too. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Us too. Thank you so much.
You can stay in touch with Plutopia at plutopia.io. On Facebook, look for @Plutopia News. On Twitter, it's @Plutopia. This is the Plutopia News Network, 20 minutes into the future.